The house on Cutler Street. I don't usually talk about what happened at our old house in Michigan. It's not something I like revisiting, but enough time has passed that I can put it into words without feeling like I'm back there, hearing those noises again. My name's Emily, and this is something that happened to me and my family when I was about 10 years old, back in 2007. We lived in a small town just outside Lansing, in a one-story house on Cutler Street. It was a kind of place where everyone knew each other. Kids rode bikes until streetlights came on, and the biggest drama was whose dog dug up whose garden. That's what made everything that happened feel so wrong. We moved there from Ohio when my dad got a job at a factory nearby. The house was nothing special. Beige siding, a patchy lawn, and a chain-link fence that sagged in the back. It had 3 bedrooms, a living room with a brick fireplace, and a kitchen that always smelled faintly of coffee, no matter how much Mom cleaned. My older brother, Jake, was 13 at the time, and we shared a room for first year, because the 3rd bedroom was more of a storage closet until Dad fixed it up. Our house backed up to a narrow strip of woods. Not a forest, just a tangle of pines and maples that separated our street from the next one over. At night, you could hear the wind moving through those trees, a low hiss that was soothing when you were half asleep. At least it used to be. The first couple of years were fine. Normal. I'd walk to school with Jake, come home, do homework, maybe watch some TV before dinner. Dad worked long hours, and Mom was always busy with something, laundry, cooking, or volunteering at the church down the road. The neighborhood felt safe. Mrs. Larson next door would wave from her porch, her little terrier yapping at anyone who passed. Mr. Conway across the street was always tinkering with his old Chevy, the clanker's wrench carrying through the evening air. It was the kind of place where you didn't lock your doors unless you were going to bed. It was late fall, around November, when things started feeling off. The days were getting shorter, and by 5:30, the sky was already bruising purple. I remember the air had that crisp bite, like snow was coming soon. Jake and I were in the living room one evening, sprawled on the carpet watching reruns of The Simpsons. Mom was in the kitchen, humming to herself while she chopped vegetables for stew. Dad wasn't home yet. His shift didn't end until 7. The living room had a big window facing the backyard, the one we always kept the curtains open on because it looked out at the woods. I liked watching the trees sway when it got windy. That night, though, something made me glance at the window. I don't know why I looked. Maybe it was a sound I didn't consciously register, or just that prickling feeling you get when something's not right. The glass reflected the glow of the TV. But beyond it, the backyard was dark, the trees just vague shapes against the sky. I squinted, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. There was something out there. Not a person, not exactly, just a shape standing near the edge of the woods, maybe 20 feet from the house. It was too dark to see details, but it was tall and it wasn't moving, just standing there. Jake, I whispered, nudging him with my elbow. He was half asleep, one arm flung over his face. Jake, look outside. He groaned, barely opened his eyes. What? There's something in the yard. He sat up, rubbing his face, and followed my gaze to the window. For a second, he didn't say anything, just stared. Then he frowned. It's probably just a deer or something. Chill out. It's not a deer, I said, my voice tighter than I meant it to be. Deer don't stand that still. Not like that. And this shape, it felt wrong, like it was watching us. I couldn't shake the feeling that if I moved, it would see me. Jake rolled his eyes, but got up and walked to the window, cupping his hands against the glass to block the reflection. He stood there for a long moment, then turned back to me. I don't see anything now. You're freaking yourself out. I looked again, and he was right. The shape was gone. The yard was empty, just the swaying trees and the faint outline of the fence. But I didn't feel relieved. My stomach was still knotted, and my hands felt clammy. I told myself it was nothing, just my imagination. But I didn't believe it. Mom called us for dinner a little while later, and I tried to act normal. The stew was hot, the kitchen warm, but I kept glancing toward the living room, half expecting to see something at the window again. Jake didn't mention it, and I didn't bring it up. I didn't want to sound like a scared little kid. But when we went to bed that night, I made sure the curtains in our room were shut tight. A few nights later, it happened again. This time, I was alone in the living room. Jake was at a friend's house, and Mom and Dad were in the kitchen, talking in low voices about bills or something. It was around 8 o'clock, pitch black outside, and I was flipping through channels, trying to find something that wasn't commercial. The wind was up that night, rattling the windows, and every so often, a branch would scrape against the house, a slow, dragging sound that made my skin crawl. I glanced at the window again. I couldn't help it, and there it was, the shape, same spot, near the woods, just standing there. My heart lurched, and I froze, gripping the remote so hard my knuckles ached. It wasn't moving, but I could feel it watching me. The TV's light flickered across the room, casting shadows that made everything feel unsteady, like the walls were shifting. I want to call for Mom, but my throat felt locked shut. All I could do was stare, waiting for it to do something, move, disappear, anything. Then I heard it, a soft thump, like something brushing against the side of the house. Not loud, but deliberate, like it was testing the wall. My breath caught, and I slid off the couch, crouching low so I couldn't be seen from the window. The thump came again, closer this time, near the back door. I crawled toward the kitchen, my knees shaking, and whispered, "Mom." She looked up from the table, where she was sorting mail. "What's wrong, Em?" "There's something outside," I said, barely audible, by the window. Dad frowned, setting down his coffee mug. "What do you mean, something?" "I don't know. It's standing there." And I heard a noise. He exchanged a look with Mom, then got up, grabbing a flashlight from the drawer. "Stay here," he said, his voice calm but firm. Mom pulled me close, her arm tight around my shoulders, as Dad stepped onto the back porch. I heard the door creak open, then the crunch of his boots on the gravel. The beam of his flashlight swept across the yard, cutting through the dark. "Anything out there?" Mom called after a minute. "Nothing," Dad said, but his tone wasn't as steady as before. He came back inside, locking the door behind him. "Just the wind, probably. Maybe a raccoon." I nodded, but I didn't believe him. He didn't sound like he believed himself either. After that, things got worse. Not all at once. It was slow, like a faucet dripping until the sink overflows. I started noticing little things. Footprints in the mud near the fence, too big to be mine or Jake's. Scratches on the back door's paint, faint but fresh, like someone had run a key across it. One night, I started hearing noises outside my window, faint but unmistakable, scrapes, thumps, and once a low, guttural sound that wasn't quite human but wasn't an animal either. Jake heard it too, though he wouldn't admit it. He'd just shrug and say it was probably a cat or the neighbor's dog. But I could see it in his eyes. He was scared too. Dad started checking the locks every night, even though he never said why. Mom bought heavier curtains, the kind that blocked out every bit of light. They didn't help. I'd lie awake, listening to the house settle, the creaks and groans that used to feel normal now sounding like warnings. Sometimes I'd hear that thump again, always soft, always close to the house. Once, I swore I saw the shape again, but it was gone before I could be sure. The worst night was in early December. It was a Friday, and Jake was staying over at a friend's. Mom and Dad were watching a movie in the living room, and I was in my room, trying to read a book for school. It was cold that night, the kind of cold that seeps into your bones, and the heater was humming, filling the house with a low drone. I don't know what time it was, maybe 10 o'clock, when I heard it. Not a thump this time, but a tap, slow, deliberate on my window. I froze, my book slipping from my hands. The curtains were closed, but I could see the shadow through the gap at the bottom. A faint outline, distorted by the glass. Tap, tap, tap. Each one was evenly spaced, like a metronome. My heart was pounding so hard, I thought I'd be sick. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't move, couldn't make a sound. The tapping stopped, and for a second, I thought it was over. Then I heard the doorknob rattle. Not my window, the back door, just down the hall. A faint jiggle, like someone was testing it. I don't know how I got the courage, but I bolted out of my room, running to the living room where Mom and Dad were still on the couch. Someone's at the door. I gasped, my voice shaking. They're trying to get in. Dad was up in an instant, grabbing the baseball bat he kept by the recliner. Mom pulled me behind her, her hands trembling as she reached for the phone. "Stay here," Dad said, moving toward the kitchen. I heard the back door creak as he opened it, then his voice loud and sharp. "Who's out there? I've got a bat and I'll use it." Silence, just the wind and the faint hum of the heater. Dad came back inside, his face pale, the bat still in his hand. "No one," he said, but his eyes darted to the windows, checking the curtains. Probably just kids messing around. Mom called the police anyway. They came, 2 officers with flashlights and bored expressions. They walked around the house, shone their lights into the woods, and found nothing. No footprints, no scratches, no sign anyone had been there. "Could have been the wind," one of them said, like he'd heard it all before. Or maybe a branch hitting the door. They left, and Mom locked the door behind them. Dad didn't say much, just sat in the recliner with the bat across his lap, staring at the TV like he wasn't really watching it. I didn't sleep that night. Neither did they. We moved a few months later. Dad got a better job in Indiana, and Mom said it was time for a fresh start. The new house was bigger, in a subdivision with no woods nearby. It felt safer, cleaner, like we'd left something behind. But I still check the locks every night. I still close the curtains before it gets dark. And sometimes when it's quiet, I think I hear it. A soft tap, 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 like it's waiting for me to look. I don't know what was out there. Maybe it was just kids, like the police said. Maybe it was an animal or the wind or my imagination running wild. But I know how it felt, lying in bed, hearing that sound, knowing something was watching, waiting. And I know one thing for sure. Whatever it was, it hasn't forgotten us.